for a minute with everybody. This is what I like to do. So starting one knee up, one knee down. Just take a moment, feel where your spine is, feel where your head is, feel where your shoulders are, and imagine something is pressing your belly back and it's making you round, and just go back and forward. And something I have to remind myself about is if the back of your head is banging on the floor, tuck your chin in so that your shoulders are pressing on the floor, but not the back of your head. So you're not practicing giving yourself a concussion. And change to the other side. An image I like to use is that my arms are floating. They're not stiff, they're not floppy, but they're floating. And I've been mostly just doing this on one side. And so the next step for me is to do this where I go back and rotate the hips so that I'm coming from with one knee down, I rotate the hips and the other knee is down. And again, if you can have a moment where you feel like you're floating when you rotate your hips. And when my back isn't feeling flexible, it's hard to have that floating feeling with your feet up in the air, because you're just gonna, you go this far, then you're already falling down again. So getting so that your feet and your hands are floating up helps me to get that sense of flexibility going in my back again. And if you don't have that moment where you can sort of be suspended, that's all right.
Okay.
That's all right. Are you back on?
Yeah,
You're back on.
Yeah, I am back on. So I think
you, Dave.
let me do this. Participants. I'll go spotlight video. Yeah, for whatever reason, the Wi-Fi connection was bad. So I have a connection I can use on my phone. So that is what we're using right now. I don't know exactly what's wrong with the Wi-Fi. As far as I know, I'm paid up. So anyway, in no particular order, it's just where we normally start. We're a little late. We'll abbreviate the first part, maybe lengthen it after we go in the other room. But let me just okay, I'll just find. Okay. Okay, this is interesting. Iron is full of impurities that weaken it. Through forging, it becomes steel and is transformed into a razor-sharp sword. Human beings develop in the same fashion. Okay, and we're going to go back one. The purpose of training is to tighten up the slack, toughen the body, and polish the spirit. Okay? And then we'll repeat what we just covered before. Iron is full of impurities that weaken it. Through forging, it becomes steel and is transformed into a razor-sharp sword. human beings develop in the same fashion. And some of the words, maybe, or something is lost in translation, toughen the body, okay? Obviously, he's a martial artist. And a lot of martial artists is, you train the body. Toughen the body might be, I would have to go into the original Japanese to get a feel for whether that's a good translation or not. But something about the body, and through that, polish the spirit. And then the next section down, it goes into how iron is full of impurities, but through forging, becomes steel. You can make a sword out of that. So I would just say that the two are somewhat interconnected. Okay, what he's referring to as iron is there's a substance to the body, but there's also consciousness. Body, as much as physical, is part of our consciousness. We may exist as consciousness without the body. I mean, there's reincarnation. In other words, you inhabit a body. Body eventually goes. Yourself as a consciousness, as the soul, continues. Okay. And, there have been documented, basically people who have died and then come back to life. They actually go through a process which is somewhat consistent. You leave the body, you come back. So, wow, when I was in that, thinking I had died, and then all of a sudden I came back into the body. So my guess a little bit is, he's really addressing, what he calls misogi. And misogi is a lot about, we are consciousness, we're soul. In other words, probably spirit. But we're also I. Okay, so the I inhabits the body. Therefore, the body is, filled with impurities. The I itself, I don't know, it just gets a lot of experiences and, just twist and that twist and everything. So what I thought we'd do today, we'll go into the other room with it. It looked like David was doing a good pattern. So we may go in just a simple roll. But just sitting around this morning for a class, feeling the body. Now what happens is a lot of times there's a bunch of stuff going on up here. And it may I may be in the idea of feeling the body. Yeah, I'd like to get out of all this noise up here. But the actual experience of being in the body is different than just the idea of it. And so just realizing most of us start with the idea. So you gotta sort of quiet down. A lot of days on a bad day, just doesn't want to quiet down, doesn't want to let go. But the field experience of being in the body. There's always activity. And to some degree, this activity colors and potentially twists our experiences, both of ourselves and what's going on. So just trying to just be present in the body. Certain things. See, I know I'm breathing, but to actually feel the breathing. Feel that experience deepening. So in other words, instead of breathing in and out up here, I'm starting to. somewhat conscious of the fact that, I sort of, there's a tension in the neck. If I kind of start to let go of that, then the head starts to just naturally position or even float on the spine. But I can be out here, just that little 1/4 inch of the chin causes tension in the back of the neck and the jaw to kind of either go up or go back. I'm starting to become aware of the spine, line of head to spine. And aware is a feeling level, but the actual experience of is a little deeper than just being aware of it. I know it, and yeah, I'm beginning to kind of feel it. But the field experience is a bit different. I feel my feet on the ground. Right, left, left, right. Kind of feel the back of my neck again, so that's kind of like that a little bit. But if I just sort of settle it. Again, we're after the feel experience of being in the body, not thoughts about it, or even I'm becoming aware of the body, because most of them are caught up in here and out there. Start to feel that the breathing starts to go more into what I term breath. There's an out breath, in breath, but and as I settle into, see, I can know that. That's the awareness side of it, but to actually settle a bit deeper with it. The feel experience of breath. And as I start to get fuller through the body, I start to pick up some things. For example, there's a feeling of calm. Not so much I'm calm or I'm aware that there's calm around, but it's just more, if I can start to feel the body, I start to pick up qualities like the calm. I'm sort of aware that there's that tension in the back of my neck. But you're conscious of it, but you kind of stay with the larger feel experience of body. That includes breathing, possibly going into that area where breathing sort of segues into breath. I'm still conscious of all this activity up here, but I'm just going to settle in a bit deeper into the experience of being in the body. And I become conscious of the fact that my surroundings kind of come into play. They're much more vivid. Without looking or staring, start to take in more of the room. In fact, I find this a very healthy place because we spend so much of our lives, just in this noisy mind or I place. And kind of breathing, the breath, settled feeling of feet on the ground. I'm all of a sudden conscious of the fact that whatever was in the back of my neck was sort of melted into the experience of being present. So if I keep looking to see if it's there, it's there. But again, you sort of melt into the experience. It's not like, okay, I'm going to be here. See, that's why that expression, toughen the body. I got to be tough. Yeah. But you also have to be conscious. You have to be able to feel, process. And I can just be tough in a very stupid linear way. So that area right there for work. Just in the feel experience of the body. And now I start to become conscious of the fact that it's almost like, even though I can't really, of course I'm looking and I'm reflected back, but I get a feel of what's behind me. And if you had a prior problem, like whatever reason this was not as up to par as the rest of the body, then all of a sudden that sort of has melted into the experience. If I look for it, it's probably still going on, but the overall reading of where I am is much more just present. And all of a sudden I was a little this way, my spine corrected, and all of a sudden it's almost like there's a hole in a peg and it's partially in, but all of a sudden, so all of a sudden, see, even that's pretty good. It's like that was there. So all of a sudden, just catching it up. And as we go into the feel experience of it, it deepens. And again, it's natural to come up here and say, how am I doing? Am I really doing it? That's what you go back into the feel experience. We spend so much time up here, this draws our attention very quickly. A lot of what we've been working so far recently with the sense feel, one of the real components of it is just be able to, it's very difficult to sense feel when this is going on. And conversely, when this, you can go into an awareness zone of things, but just to be able to settle, be able to feel the body. And we could get into it, maybe we'll do it later, but there are sense feel things that start to kind of show. Energy fields, things like that. And all of a sudden I'm out there, you know, in the awareness of them, but it's amazing how as you get deeper into the feel experience of the body, the other states or dimensions also become more feel experience. So that's a major thing. So sometimes just to spend some time just sort of feel the body. One thing that happened yesterday is we went to Felton. I used to live there, 1995 to about 2005. I owned some property there. And then more recently, what happened is a couple of friends that I used to visit, they actually wanted to get rid of a little parcel lot. So wound up actually getting that. And there's a little building there, and sometimes we go up there because it's just kind of healing to be in the redwoods. And one thing that I'd sort of forgotten, when you live up there, you're constantly cold. Not necessarily freezing, but you know, it's different than right here where you have a heater, air conditioning. There's that cabin. And just hanging out there yesterday, my body started to remember what it was like. In other words, it's hard to be kind of sleepy. What I used to do is put one of those little logs on that you get at Safeway or something. There was a fireplace, and I would do that and let it burn for a while, and then I'd go to sleep. That would kind of keep me warm for a while until I drifted off. Okay, all right. But there was that very definite body feel. Body remembered that. And it's in such stark contrast to where we are in the social distancing and isolation somewhat. We're inside a lot. And it was kind of refreshing to go back there and just get the body feel memory of what it was kind of like to be up there in the mountains. So body feel as an experience is the basis for a lot. Again, the body is a consciousness or a part of our consciousness. And then there's I, an I living in a very ordinary world, a manifest realm. You know, acquires experiences, good, bad, light, dark, opinions, senses, according to Sensei, become clogged, sense ordinary. Our thoughts resonate ordinary. So to be able to settle into the experience, the feel experience of being in the body is just a way of, it's a gateway. So I feel calmer. And if I look at the world, it hasn't changed. But in the feel experience of being in the body, I'm more in the moment. I can pick up qualities like calm, deeper ground, an interior experience of breath. And the world will do that to you. That span. The world will pull you out. So noted, back to the feel experience of being in the body. And that appears to be a very, very important thing. Polishing the spirit. The body is some kind of a tool for that. There's mental activity. As we get more into feel experience of the body, the mental activity starts to broaden, deepen as well. And when I'm running around with the thoughts in what we call the more ordinary world out there, things become very stressful. So things like seated meditation or meditation for me is a little bit like getting into feel experience of the body and picking up some of the finer states like the calm, the clear, the silence. And try as much as possible to get into the feel experience as opposed to just the knowledge or the awareness of it. Okay. We are going to go into the other room. There seems to be much more noise than usual, but we'll see what we can do with it.
You're gonna hire a lot of people that want to.
So here we are. It'll take me a sec. Internet problems kind of set us back. So. Yeah. So here we are, and reasonable. Okay. And so, as you probably noticed, that there's a lot of activity around, and that activity tends to create an interior activity, and it pulls us out. You haven't noticed the world goes crazy a lot. And here we are, kind of being buffeted by that crazy. So just the ability to kind of settle, feel the body, things will move, but getting into the real experience of the body is crucial. And so I'm standing here, I'm getting a good sense that for right now, there's a good right-left balance, too forward, holding back, or I don't want to wander too far from here. There's a lot of stuff that we need to deal with out there, but I kind of really want to base a lot of what I do. It's just being here, calmer, the eye at this level is calmer. Therefore, things are clearer. One thing that Don Juan in the Castaneda books told Carlos, he says, everything that we call shamanism, or another word for it was sorcery, it just said is in the human body. Okay? So, how much of Sensei's stuff came because maybe he was not, and of course he was a martial artist, so toughen the body. There's certain training that we do, okay? But the body itself is a type of consciousness. I say awareness. I'm aware of it, but it's a consciousness. Okay? For example, here, as I feel the body raise, I start to see, or feel energy waves. So I'd like you to just sort of play around a little bit, Currents. So I'm waving the arms, talking about currents out there. We did some work last class with the energy field here, but we can just sort of start to feel the body. Body kind of feels like it's afloat on a fairly calm ocean with your energy waves. I can be here copying this motion, but this sort of motion, there's a current or forms. There's a current. That current can be pretty leisurely, or boom can be very, very rapid. But it's a field experience through the body. Okay? So what I'd like you to do is just take an arm. There's a bead or vibration going on. Just kind of feel Let that beat and vibrations going on through my hips. Feel it in my ankles. It's just like boom. It's almost like that beat's coming from deeper and boom, goes back deeper. Boom. Boom, 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 but boom, boom, boom. That big motion can be condensed. Boom, 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 boom. I'm trying to figure it out, see it, but if I'm in that field experience of the body, I start to pick up those beats, not just out here, but in my hips, my knees. Boom, 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 boom. Something expanding, coming back to itself. Almost any motion is based on an energy beat, an energy flow. How many of them are there? For the feel experience of the body, what happens with that is we and so as I'm doing that, okay, just enjoying the feeling of being in here. Yeah, sometimes it's like Tai Chi. That's one reason why I really enjoy the Tai Chi, because it gives me a chance to, instead of okay, anyway, well, let's do this. Sort of check in. Anybody with an observation? Anything to? So just the feel experience of being in the body, not the awareness of it. That's the beginnings of it. But the feel experience of being in the body. Anybody? Again, we're asking you to talk about an experience, so that's a little bit up here and out there, but.
Just that because I'm in an environment with small children and lots of interruptions, I appreciated the spam call and the recovery. So, yeah, as the model.
Yeah, the world is full of busyness that will pull us out. So I think part of what Sensei was talking about is just toughen the body. It's like, part of this is just being very flexible. Tension goes out, but this is kind of like a center, a very important priority, to just be a bit more present in the moment, which is in the feel experience of the body. Some things out there I can't change, but I can change where I'm coming from with them. Okay? Anybody else? Something to share, comment? It's amazing that when I'm here, I really want to kind of move, not necessarily do calisthenics or anything, but enjoy the feeling of ground, kind of the sense of the relaxed rightness, the center. And movement sort of, instead of, I got to do this, it's more like there's a flow going whatever direction I want to go. And if I need to, I can adapt, go another direction. There's a flow going this way. So that's part of there with the experience of being in the body. For example, I'm going to go here, but then again, I could decide to go here, or I could change, or I could just pause. And in all flows, there's kind of a stillness if we learn to tune into it. Now, that's knowledge, but I'm just sort of in the body a bit more. In the body. So much of what we do in terms of energy, in terms of finer dimensions, it has to do with just, as a very important basic, getting the ever deepening experience of being in the body on a feel experience level. That's a lot of Aikido. Yes, we're learning movements. Yes, there's a philosophy, which is very important. But if sensei's words is put it in the body or understand it through the body, it doesn't mean you're a jock. All right? See, if I can go here, it's almost like there's a support. Like, you know, I'm going to have to stand here for a while, but if I'm kind of standing in water, the water has a buoyancy. And as we, so one of the things we're working on, I mean, you can never go wrong just working on deepening the field of experience of being in the body. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is to just make sure I'm on the big screen. What do I do here? Yeah, okay, yeah. And, yeah, David, I think, was taking everybody here. This is a good one. Now, we're going to go back and forth a little bit. But see, I get too caught up in the busyness of what we're going to do. So just take a second or two. Now, we were doing most of this standing or sitting in a chair. All of a sudden, I'm sitting on the ground. And then, you know, where the mind gets active. What am I going to do? Oh, haven't done this in a while or whatever. So I think a second or two, just sort of get the breathing. Okay. Breathing is good. It gets me somewhat in the body. As I said, a little deeper, I go more towards, so I'm not there yet, but that feeling of breathing becomes breath. I can prep for the back and forth by just doing some movement here. Camera lean, go forward. I'm leaning, it's up here and out there. I'm conscious of the fact that I go back, it's not so much the head is leading, but I'm actually getting a lot of support from my core area right here. So when I go back, right? It's almost like, see, if I go back, I swing back, I go, that's the head leading. Yeah, it's almost like this area kind of pulls me up forward, not out. Boom. If I go back, I swing that way, I gotta swing here. But and so I'm starting to kind of pick up energy flows. I'll start getting a better sense of how my body works. Tuck the head in, go back. That's how we start. But yeah. For this simple motion, now I'm going to highlight the other side. And every once in a while, like for example, there's that flow, but there's so stillness going on. So I can do that as knowledge, but just sort of taking that little extra. In the field experience of the body, there's a sense that there's a stillness or calm. Now, how can that be going on and calm be going on? See, any motion oftentimes has a yin-yang to it. And as you get the yin-yang to it, there's kind of a calmness or a center. My mind gets active, starts looking for what does he mean by center, but feeling of being in the body with some balance in these two movements may lead you to a calm, still. That's not the same, but it's associated with the feel experience of body. And as I'm kind of a little more here, too busy, I'm looking for it, trying to do it, I trip over my own shoestrings. I get too busy. So just not trying to stop that, but just be increasingly easy. I got to notice that all that activity that was going on sort of quieted down. Now, it's not to say there's a cause-effect relationship, but if I get too bothered by all the noise and all the distractions out there, I become magnetized to them. If you don't like something, a lot of times we polarize against it. That means we're pushing off and it keeps pushing back. So sometimes, yeah, it's an annoyance. So right here, I'm kind of enjoying the feeling of just sort of sitting with the calm. So on this side, simple back, simple forward. Simple motion, but just enjoying the back and forth, somewhat conscious of the fact there's sort of a flow, and also realizing at any time there's also a calm. Look at the balance of the calm shows. The reverse is also true. As you calm down enough, so I'm too busy up here, but I start to get the calm through the body feel. Oh, there's a this and that. So really, it goes both ways, right? You might, for example, need to calm down to feel the body. That's fine. Or conversely, you may need to move the body from a body feel place to hit the calm. Both are fine. And you may change day by day. That's why Sensei, I think, to some degree, said it's always new. The arm going this way, it kind of has a sense where it's floating. Time-lapse photography, but boom, can go fast. Boom. You can speed the camera up. Boom. Or appreciate it at this speed. Yeah. So, just in some sense, as I sort of get not just knowledge, but just a feel experience of the body as a gateway into, let's say, these other dimensions, are constantly here. Sensei might refer to them as part of what he calls the hidden realm. It's energy. Most of the time we're too busy up here and out there to be, they're not accessible when we're here. In fact, we feel pushed by them. So as we start to get the feel experience of the body, we start to, oh, there's a flow there, or there's a flow there. This is a flow, that is a flow. And so in that way, you see, what I'm kind of getting there is that there's a sense of wonder, boom, of awakening. And again, all we did was just spend some time being present and through the body. All right? Okay? Yeah. So, again, anybody with an observation, anything to share? I'm speaking for everybody, but it's better if somebody else says, this is what I'm picking up. I'm kind of curious. Okay? Anybody? Nobody? Okay. Yes.
I have no new insights. So,
Well, yeah, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you're just getting into the deeper feel experience of something. And it's not that you don't have words. It's just that instead of talking about it, knowing about it, you're settling into a deeper relationship with yourself, therefore with that. So perfectly fine. Okay.
I did notice that I once again I should be doing more of these roles because I'm not used to them anymore.
Yeah, you know, in a lot of ways, you know, most anything, just simple practices are good, you know. Let's see, we're getting there. Okay, so those of you that say we should be doing more of something, okay, so let's go into everybody's favorite, you know, and, you know, depending on the state of your knees and your back and everything. But for example, I haven't been doing this very much. So my first thing is, my knees start to kind of bark at me. All right. So one of the things to do is like, you know, when you're in discomfort, it's hard to do that. So we just sort of, So I could be down there trying to cope with the fact I don't sit this way, so I go and go, ouch. Okay. And, you know, I'm still conscious of, you know, the fact there's discomfort, but I'm in a better place with it. So it's more of the body feel place, but I still feel like I'm more forward than I need to be. Okay? So I'm just gonna give myself permission to ease out of that. This is where sometimes, like the word toughen the body, you can stay at that first place and just deal with the discomfort. All right? But now there I'm starting to slot in. Now it's not so much my knees that are barking as my ankles, but so you know you can just get these things right here instead of kind of toughing it out. I didn't go anywhere else. I'm just saying, okay, I'm going to make another approach on something. And as I sort of sit here a little bit more, the ankles stop barking. This is again, you know, part of this is, you know, one of the things about, okay, I got to be tough. Yeah, the world is that way. We have to have a certain amount of toughness, mental, physical, even spiritual. Right now, this is a very tough time. Yeah, let's settle back again. Yeah. Now there's the perception that I'm floating on something. I noticed that, you know that hole and the center's fitting that. Would I want to sit here for hours? No, but pretty cool here right now. So, you know, it took me about 4 quick ones to get to a Bodyfeel place. And I could have toughed it out. Maybe I would have made it here. But then, you know, you get into that hole, I'm suffering, I do a lot, I got to get tougher. Maybe all you got to do is be smarter. So right about here, you know, as much as, you know, I could say I'm in a pretty good place with sitting stays on. I don't want to sit here forever this way. But this, the sense of the body feel, all of a sudden, instead of the reaction to the discomfort, I'm in a pretty good place. Body has a balance with itself. Could I be better? I'm going to ease out of that. Settle back in. You know, that one, for example, my center existed, it adjusted to a little bit more, it was a little bit here, now it's back here. And again, that's something you become conscious of, not just aware of, but conscious of, as you're coming from where the body feel area. In my right ankle, it always tends to be tenser because I really had a very bad basketball injury in my 20s. And I'm going, God, my right ankle's still, it's starting to kind of melt into the experience. And you can tough it out. But sometimes what that does is it warps you. All right? You're too tough. You don't feel. I remember in the Miyamoto Musashi trilogy with Toshiro Mifune, you know, Mifune as Musashi's training hard. And he wins this match with this guy with a hammer sickle. And this old guy who's been around, he looks at Musashi and says, "You're not samurai yet." And he uses the expression, "Suyo sugiru." You're too strong. You're too tough. And so what happens is interesting. He goes to Kyoto and he challenges the heads of schools and he starts beating them because they're really good at their routines, but he's been in the battle of Sekigahara. He knows what it's like to put your life on the line. And the teachers are skillful, but they don't. So he wins. But what happens? He beats the teacher. The schools want revenge. They've been disgraced. So everybody's looking for Musashi because the whole school wants to kill him. And so he finds sanctuary in this geisha house. And the head of the geisha house is, she's the head of the geishas, and she's a very beautiful woman. And he comes in there and she looks at him and says, you lack poise. So he's in this house where they would never think to look. That becomes a sanctuary. And she says something like, out there, you're the toughest guy in existence. But in this house, you're the weakest because you lack poise. I mean, the geisha has to have poise, has to have center. And, so he hangs out there and he learns. And so, that sense, suyo sugiru, you're too strong. And I think with those senses says toughen the body, there's a danger there. You become too strong. Because as strong as he is, he's not going to beat a whole swords fool. If he thinks he's too strong, he's going to get strong to a certain level. And then he's going to face this, in a situation where he's not strong enough because the odds don't favor him. Whereas if you have poise, you begin to look at things like, okay, how can I handle a situation where I can't outwardly be stronger than everybody? Poise, intelligence, consciousness. So part of this, now I'm sitting here, it's probably going to take me a little bit to stand up, but all of a sudden, I'm in a pretty good place. So, and when I come up, it'll take a second or two, my ankles and knees, as they get older, adjusting from there to standing. Well, let's sort of have a place mark in the body feel place. And that kind of allows, the ankles are going on, the knees are going to go that way, but I'm pretty good here. Okay. And for example, this motion, I could swing it and I can swing it this amount of time. I'm getting tougher. I'm tougher in the body. See, there are big movements, but in a certain area, you can take those big movements, condense them, boom, into that motion, and boom. That's different than, and using the body as a gateway to the different energies, big, expansive, boom, everything miniaturized, boom. If I'm in the awareness of it, I can learn to do that, but there's a boom, boom, right? So even, exercise that appears like you're doing that, are based in this Bodyfeel area. Okay, how many do you have to swing? Since I could probably get to a very good place, one swing. Okay. Anyway, we are. Whoops. So. Yeah. Okay. So we took kind of a journey into that body feel place, the experience of it. And, we're all working on going from the awareness of something more into the feel experience of it. But since there was he talks a lot about the body because here, the eye, maybe the eye itself, I think in Sensei's case, the eye is certain way. So it's like the eye kind of is satisfied with this. So he kind of went way past that. Okay. All right. And so, part of the whole thing about toughening the body, I think, is a lot of ways because the eye oftentimes is very satisfied with very little. But sometimes you got to be smarter. You see what I mean? Not like take shortcuts, but say, oh, okay, some of that, yeah. Yeah, you got to get somewhat tougher. Okay. Yeah. In other words, to deal with everything going on, you can't just react and fold. You've got to say, okay. But a lot of that's just the ability to blend. And sometimes the most useful blends are blending with things we don't want to blend with, like the pandemic. Or there was an article today in The Guardian about how the last 4 years of the current presidency have been like an abusive relationship, which we are now starting to hopefully heal from. And it takes time. It takes time. But right this moment, what we can do to not speed it up, but kind of go deeper into that healing process is just the importance of the feel experience of being in the body. You're still going to think, you're still going to be in situations, but when you do that, there's a whole different level of center that starts to come through us. Okay? Anybody with a question? So today we kind of see, the finer states are always going on. It's just that we're so caught up in, to be honest with you, I was going to say the ordinary world is just getting caught up in all the impurities of the eye. And what that does do, it locks us into a very narrow bandwidth of experience. And as much as, the actual sense of things, as we get a bit more into the field experience of body, then what is mind also starts to be unleashed, if I use that term. It's kind of dramatic. Because, real intelligence comes out of imagination. And the imagination allows you to see relationships that other people don't or can't see. And there's I running around masquerading as mind. And all it does is keep us kind of in a very limited sense of who we are, and the world in a very limited sense of what it is. Okay? Don Juan says the world is incalculable. It's a mystery. And, as we start to get who we are, that world is something that's wondrous. And it also, as we're kind of leaving this zone here, there's a terrifying factor to how immense and how wonderful it is. And so, as we get into more of the body field, that apparently is a very important gateway into the more of who we are, and therefore the more of what the world, or in those sensei's terms, the universe is. Okay? Anybody comment, question? I've got to call Nadeau Sensei. He wants to have should we meet on we usually talk on Thursdays, but that's Thanksgiving. So I told him, so I'm supposed to call him around 1:30. So, but I've got a little time. I'm probably in a pretty good place to deal with him right now. So anybody with a question or observation?
I have a question about eddies and currents. So like eddies and currents. And I guess it's just kind of like Alec Guinness in Star Wars, where it feels like the currents are already there and they partly control where I'm moving, but it also feels like my moving causes the currents. And yes. I don't know that that's a contradiction so much as an interaction.
Well, at some point, and this goes probably in stages, is the flow moving me, or am I creating that flow in the moment? You say, that's kind of a koan. To some degree, we create our own reality. But on the other hand, there's kind of a consensus reality that's created for us as long as we stay kind of in a certain zone, with the I and what Bruce Lee called the noisy mind. And so that's a good question. If I'm going to stand up, then I'm conscious, there's a flow that allows me to stand up better. But on the other hand, does my intention to flow at a certain point create that flow? And so, one of the things we get there is, as much as we're working body and the field experience of the body, who am I? And that goes more into I to self. Are we creating that flow? Or is that flow assisting us? Well, Sensei said that his relationship with the universe was like an echo relationship. You do that, the universe responds. Boom. When David and I were in Kauai, we were, kind of like between knee and ankle deep and very, very wonderful ocean. We were doing some training there. And, it appeared that the whole thing was very still, but if you put your stick into the water, you found a circle forming around that. So there was current. When you stuck your stick in there, as the center, there was a circle around it. And so I had a 3-section spear. It wouldn't, not a real spear. And I stuck that spear in, and all of a sudden there was a spiral created by the 3-section spear. And so whenever you put something in it, you were altering the ocean, weren't you? And just by standing, your ankles were forming, you know, posts around which the ocean was rotating. So just by standing in the ocean, you were changing the ocean, weren't you? And so, you know, O-sensei got to a place, you know, the universe is like the ocean. He had a position in it. He understood probably just how his actions created reverberations there. Conversely, the universe itself has reverberations, and you could pick those reverberations up and sense things. I don't know if that we call those superpowers, but he insisted that a lot of it was what he called Aiki. He said that, you know, when your own body's frequency starts to resonate with the frequency of the universe, that resonance creates the key of Aikido. And he said that's the supreme secret of it. So as we start to feel the body on deeper levels, the body becomes a little bit like a breath or a vibration. That vibration, as we think, we start to pick up maybe the whole of the universe has a vibration, and then we can start to vibrate or echo in response to that, right? So, you know, that part of it, the Japanese expression, dai uchu no hibiki, right? And Daiuchu is the universe. Hibiki is the sound current, the resonance of. And one time I was with Tojima Sensei, and you know, I'd heard this term from Hikizuchi Sensei, so I mentioned that term. And Tojima Sensei looked at me and said, Daiuchu no hibiki wa satori no koto da. And you know, which translates as, hey kid, the sound current of the universe is something connected with enlightenment. And he looked, you know, the thing was, you know, and you and I definitely ain't enlightened yet. It was pretty funny. I went, whoa, okay, you know. So, you know, these are big words, but when we can get that to some degree on a feel experience level of the body, some people, you know, you're around, they kind of soothe you. Arno Sensei, for example, could be crazy there, but all of a sudden you're around him and things work. All right? Or things are totally crazy, and Tojima Sensei would come in and crack you up with a sense of humor, and you got your balance back. And there was Yanase Sensei right in the middle of all that craziness, forging and training himself. They were, in their own way, they were kind of really good role models. And there was Hikizuchi Sensei, to some degree, creating all the craziness, saying, this is for you to train with. And we're going, okay, thank you. So, but, you know, that area right there where, yeah. And to some degree, you got to be somewhat tough to handle the insanity. But, you know, you can just toughen yourself up and get indifferent to it. Whereas, you know, to some degree, you know, what it is that you got to know sometimes when enough is enough. You know, like Seiza, right? I'm just going to sit Seiza. I'm going to tough through all the pain in my knees and ankles and the discomfort here and there. Yeah, I'll get there. But sometimes it's like, okay, go up, relieve it, I'll try again. By about the fourth stay, you know, down there, I'm kind of in a position where I can be okay down there. You know, to some degree, I don't want to just block everything out because I'm too busy being tough. I may not be picking up some subtle changes going on. So, you know, sometimes, you know, if you look at the words, I would have to look at the, see, Tanren, forging, is a little different than tough. You're polishing yourself, right? Forging is taking the iron, you know, I and the physical body and mind and I kind of, kind of the senses all kind of clogged up and creating this consensus reality. Forging is getting all that, and therefore, that the sword represents more like who we truly are as opposed to the iron. If you get too tough, if you keep beating and toughening a sword, you may destroy it. It probably has an optimal place where you're fire, water, fire, water. If you go past that, you're probably not going to make a better sword. Sword master has to say, this is good enough for now. This is good enough for, this is good enough for. In that Musashi film, he goes in there and wants a sword polisher to polish his sword. And the sword master looks at him and says, get lost. And he gets really upset. But then he goes back in there and he bows and is very respectful and says, will you polish my very tarnished, rusty, dirty soul? And the sword, polisher says, incredible, wonderful, yes, give me your sword. See, he did, like Musashi goes in there, you will polish my sword. He says, get lost. He goes back, having kind of cleaned some of that mess off, and says, will you polish my very imperfect, dirty, rusty soul? Yes. And so, part of the training, see, Musashi went in there too tough. And, the sword man says, you don't get everything by being the toughest guy. But yeah, you got some humility. You got some potential, kid. Give me your sword. And so you can make yourself way too tough. Now, most of us maybe don't. You have to be functionally tough enough to be able to weather some things. But that's the one thing in that section we read today about toughen the body. Yeah, some. Yeah. I started doing push-ups. Why? Because, there's not a lot of physical activity. I started out, I do 30. I did that for a while. Then I went to 50. Did that for a while. Then I just let it go. I actually made it to 100. I was surprised. Woo, me, 100 push-ups. I don't know if I'm doing great push-ups or not. But, okay. Yeah, it's a little bit. Do I want to do it? Clear. I got to be able to. What if I can't do it today? Listen, get into the Bodyfeel place. Get the energy for that. Now, there's other things I could be doing that I'm not. But part of me is kind of likes the sense of this, right? The great trumpet player Chet Baker, he's helping his friend Art Frank clear out a wall. They're going to actually break down a wall and build a new one. And he's pretty thin. And so, they take their shirts off to do it. And, Art looks at Chet and says, hey, you got some muscles. In other words, he's really thin, but, he takes his shirt off and he maybe looks a little bit more like Bruce Lee. It's kind of a surprise, right? And Baker looks at him and says, yeah, I do a push-up now and again. He probably, playing the trumpets, right? I mean, it's not you play out there, you're playing, you're engaging all this, the breath, the body. So I don't think he might have done a couple of push-ups for me. It's like, martial arts instructor, so I got to be able to do something. Say I do something in this pandemic. Yeah, I swing the sword. I do some Tai Chi, right? Other than that, part of it is just kind of staying more in the feel experience of being in the body. And I get into crazy, what's going on, 4 years of the current administration has created this crazy place. And hopefully we're calming down. Okay, anybody, before I go, because I gotta call the sensei in about 10 minutes. Anybody with a question? That, by the way, is a really good thing to do, is just to sort of work on the feel experience of the body. That's really, because I can't get into the feel experience of the finer realms. I can be in the awareness of them. But the actual feel experience is more O-sensei's path. Although Sensei likes to tell the story of how Sensei said something like, he could have had more followers if he kind of taught an outwardly upper spiritual thing. But he looked around and said there are too many of those people. So he kind of chose a different direction. Okay. Now that one by itself, it's a different direction. It doesn't mean we're not going to learn more. We're not going to be aware of more things. But as we go a little deeper into the field experience, it's almost like the knowledge comes from a different direction. It's interesting that Tojima Sensei could do things like, what did he do? He came over here, he spent a month in 1978. Japanese toilets and American toilets are different. And the place he was staying, the toilet broke. So he says, Jack, take me to a hardware store. So I took him to the hardware store. He looked around, bought exactly what he needed, went back and repaired a Western toilet. One time we were at a wedding, and at the wedding, you're supposed to get up and do embarrassing things after you've drunk some sake. That's just the way it goes. And so they put Tojima Sensei on the spot. Everybody's dressed up. There's a guy with a suit and a vest. And so they tell Tojima Sensei he's supposed to get the vest off without the guy removing his jacket. He'd never done that before. It took him about 3 minutes. And there was the vest, and the guy had not taken off his jacket. Did I pay attention? I was probably too drunk. But I did, training, that's one of the weaknesses of it. Because, you start to do too much training, you get really drunk. You get into, I'm too tough, right? You start to get extreme in other things. Like, oh my God, I got a day off where I don't have to go to the dojo and train. It's a wedding, there's free food, there's drink. And you can really over drink, just as a, whoa, I got to let go of all this tough stuff. And so, but what he did is he just somehow, I don't know how he did it, but he got that vest off without the guy removing his suit. So Tojima Sensei had this ability. And one thing he had was he really understood the body feel experience. And therefore his mind is one of the most intelligent people I ever met. And he didn't graduate high school. At the time, he was a factory worker in rural Japan, working for a paper pulp factory that spewed all of this stuff into the atmosphere. And he was one of the brightest people I ever met. And I think what happens as we get a little bit more into the field experience of the body, what we call mind, which is much more associated with seeing relationships and imagination, starts to also clear. And we get into a feel experience of mind instead of I. I think, I know. And so a lot of that for me is what, Misogi is about. And so when you read that stuff and somebody says it's toughen the body, yes. But my sense is you through the body, you get to a feel experience place of it. So the mind starts to kind of go back to its more original nature. One thing I read today, it was on Facebook, and it was an Albert Einstein story where he was talking about textbooks and stuff. And he said, that's not real education. Real education is learning how to do things that are not in textbooks. That's real education. So the same thing, he was not primarily a body person, but a lot of his stuff was the ability to run a thought experiment, put his body into various situations, and to use his imagination to see the relationships between things like space, time, gravity, his basic equation, relativity, geometry, equals, on this side, physics. Wow. He didn't learn that from a textbook. Now, there have been textbooks written about that. Okay? And one of his things, imagination, is more important than knowledge. The other thing he said that I always, it resonates well with me is all I want to do is learn God's thoughts. Everything else, details. If I can think like God, God created the universe, I'll understand the universe. Okay? So it seems like a very humble thing to say, okay, I'm just going to get in the feel experience of the body. But it's key to so much. If this culture had that, then we wouldn't have all those political divisions. Why? No matter if you're a progressive or a conservative, a Republican, or a Democrat, or a racist, or whatever, you got a body. And all of our bodies are pretty similar. And if we all got into the field experience of the body, we're still going to have our I personality to some degree, but we might not have all this separation and division and conflict. So in those sense, they said, the world family, it would be a feel experience through the body. We would have compassion. We'd have the insight of mind unleashed as opposed to I, and this would be a much better world. There goes Sensei, so I'm gonna end my program. I'll be right with you. Okay, yeah. So anyway, Commissioner Gordon's calling the Batman. So
Thank you, Sensei. Bye.
Oh, by the way, there's Tai Chi tonight. Okay.
I'll be there.
Whoops, come on.